How do black people not have access to a better life in America? What's preventing them?
What's preventing black people
Yes.
from having...
The Rockefellers are one of the most powerful, richest, elite families in the world. John D. Rockefeller was the guy who really blew up the entire oil industry in America. And what they do, and the reason why they're still one of the wealthiest and most powerful families on the planet 7 generations later, is because of something called the Rockefeller waterfall method. The Vanderbilts were just as powerful and actually had more money than them. They blew all of their money by the 4th generation. The Vanderbilts literally are not even part of the conversation anymore. What is the waterfall method? The waterfall method is every single individual of the Rockefeller family got a very large life insurance policy put on them. The beneficiaries of those life insurance policies always tied back to the trust. And then inside of the trust was a cash value life insurance policy, which is used as the family bank. Now the family bank is inside the trust, so it acts as like a family vault. Now all the family members can take loans from the cash value life insurance throughout their whole life. When they die and pass away, that death benefit pays it all back, therefore replenishing all the funds that they use throughout their life. And with every single generation, the family trust just keeps getting poured in with more and more and more and more money, therefore making the family richer.
I want to talk here about generational wealth and what it has to do with race and privilege. First, I want to define generational wealth. As it says in its name, generational wealth is financial security and opportunity that's passed on through generations. So that can be you're a beneficiary in a life insurance policy, you receive an inheritance, you receive property, stocks, bonds, cash, you get help buying a house or going to college or getting married from people in your family. You might inherit a business from someone in your family. That's generational wealth. Quickly, the difference between wealth and income, just a really basic visual. If you could imagine a bucket, income is what you're putting into the bucket. Wealth is what's already in there. So wealth is accumulated and passed on generationally. In the United States, about 38% of white folks report that they were able to receive approximately $10,000 or more in assistance from a family member. And the number for black folks is closer to, I think, 16%. And it's also, I think, about 14% for Latino, 34% for Asian, and I can't remember any other specific groups right now. Lack of wealth is directly linked to historical systematic exclusion. So we're about 5 generations post-slavery in the United States. And when we're looking at slavery, we're discussing the idea that enslaved folks could not own property, could not accumulate income or even receive income, so they couldn't accumulate wealth. Obviously, no retirement benefits. Even when slavery was abolished, we had black codes, which were sets of laws in the United States that prohibited black folks from making fair wages, voting, being able to hold a job. It put a lot of restrictions on when and where they could work. Even sometimes took children away from their families to force children into labor. So that oppression continued via black codes and Jim Crow laws until 1968, which my parents were born before then, and I know there are people who are watching this who were born before then.
Slavery ended. White lawmakers needed a new way to control black people, so they created black codes. These laws turned everyday life for freedmen into a crime. No job, vagrancy, jail, standing on the corner, loitering, jail, traveling without papers, suspicious, jail. Once locked up, men were torn from their families and forced into labor. It was slavery rebranded, profitable for the state and devastating for the home. As black families began to rebuild, the welfare system twisted fatherlessness into a weapon.
If you're black, you've probably heard of 40 acres and a mule, the idea that black people following the end of the Civil War were supposed to be given land as reparations, and you probably have just thought of this as a vague promise or a metaphor. But what you might not know is that some black people were actually given land, that we have the documents to prove that people were given reparations and had it taken back exactly 6 months later. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about the history of watermelon for black farmers. So after the emancipation of African Americans in the rural South, many of our ancestors were working to make a living. Some of them worked as sharecroppers, some of them began to open up shops and various things like that. Those of them that had their own areas to farm decided to farm watermelon. And because of this, they began to make more money and begin to thrive. And because African Americans were thriving economically, cartoons and comics and things like this began to take the forefront, which naturally became a form of shame and degradation. Now, mind you, watermelon is extremely nutritious, and these black farmers were feeding their families and also created a means of sustaining them financially. And of course, racist propaganda perpetuated this jigaboo image that then kind of created this disdain for watermelon farming.
Many black inventors face challenges in reaping the financial benefits of their inventions due to systemic racial discrimination that hindered their access to resources, capital, and patents. Large corporations or government agencies often reap the profits of these black inventions. George Washington Carver discovered over 300 uses for peanuts, including peanut butter. His greatest contribution was in agriculture innovation, especially rotation techniques for cotton farmers. However, Carver did not patent most of his discoveries, and he worked primarily to help farmers. He made very little money from his inventions, while larger white-owned farms reaped the financial benefit of his discoveries, creating generational wealth for their families.
How do black people not have access to a better life in America? What's preventing them?
What's preventing black people
Yes.
from having a better life in America?
Yes. What's preventing them?
Police, the government.
Hold on. No.
universities.
Hold on. Police.
the
How
United
many
States
unarmed black
Donald
men died?
Trump.
How many
Donald
unarmed?
Trump.
How many